President Biden has committed to the removal of all American troops from Afghanistan before September 11th. The question remains, what will happen to this rural, rough-hewn country? Will it devolve into further chaos? Will the Taliban overthrow the democratically elected Afghan government? Will it reinstitute its ruthless brand of Sharia law, punctuated by a broad array of brutal, antediluvian human rights abuses? It's hard to know. Afghanistan is already a divided state. According to a March report from the Council on Foreign Relations, 19% of Afghan districts are controlled by the Taliban, whereas the government holds about 33%. The rest is up for grabs. And that one-third control has come at a steep price. More than 6,000 U.S. troops and contractors, as well as 1,100 NATO soldiers, have died in this conflict. During that time, the Taliban has lost somewhere between 55 and 85,000 fighters. Civilians, as usual, have paid the steepest price. Brown University's Watson Institute places the number of Afghan civilian casualties since 2001 at 43,000, along with fighters. That brings the total toll in Afghanistan to 157,000. This brutal cost is not just in deaths, but as the Watson Institute explains, the war effect includes elevated rates of disease due to lack of clean drinking water, malnutrition, and reduced access to health care. Nearly every factor associated with premature death, poverty, malnutrition, poor sanitation, lack of access to health care, environmental degradation is exasperated by the current war. It's been a long slog. After the United States ousted the Taliban from Afghanistan in 2001 and ended their quixotic, harsh rule, the fugitive faction retreated to the hinterlands of Pakistan, where they regrouped and unleashed insurgent raids on U.S.-backed forces for 19 years. Now that Pakistani-backed Taliban militias are stronger than ever, and all the while, the Taliban has never acknowledged the legitimacy of the current Afghan government. That said, the Taliban signed a power-sharing peace agreement in 2020 on the condition they would no longer launch guerrilla attacks. Nothing changed. The Taliban continued launching surprise offensives. Intra-Afghan talks are mostly stalled as the Taliban plays its waiting game for control, balancing between interruptions and incursions. Stephen Pressfield quotes a Taliban commander in his 2011 book, The Warrior Ethos. "You have the watches, we have the time." Growing up, my grandfather, an Oriental rug merchant, imported from Afghanistan hundreds of carved and decorated flintlock long guns, or giselles, the hardware of which was retrieved from fallen British soldiers as they retreated from their wayward military campaign of failed conquest in the 1800s. Then, that was a total defeat. Today, the United States has grown weary of war. Americans don't have the patience to wait out the Taliban. This, despite the fact that there have been no American casualties in the last year in Afghanistan. For the American military, the strategy is not a question of winning, but of not losing. George Creel III, author of Charlie Wilson's War, recounted Congressman Wilson's vain attempt to keep an American presence in Afghanistan after Russian troops withdrew. He wrote of the Mujahideen's victory. By the end of 1993 in Afghanistan itself, there were no roads, no schools, just a destroyed country. And the United States was washing its hands of any responsibility. It was in this vacuum that the Taliban and Osama bin Laden would emerge as the dominant players. It is ironic that a man who had almost nothing to do with the victory over the Red Army, Osama bin Laden, would come to personify the power of jihad. Americans don't remember Charlie Wilson. We have had enough of Afghanistan. President Biden asserted Wednesday we cannot continue this cycle of extending or expanding our military presence in Afghanistan, hoping to create ideal conditions for the withdrawal and expecting a different result. The military thinks otherwise. David Petraeus, the former CIA chief and commander of U.S. troops in Afghanistan, said in a video conference call, "I'm really afraid that we're going to look back 2 years ago and regret the decision." From the White House, this is Doug Christian for Real Political News. And don't forget to listen to our podcast with my co-host, John Christopher Bua.